Now, why does everybody know the boys are naturally better at programming? I mean, there's absolutely no evidence anywhere that shows that to be true. But why is that such a current belief set among young males and young females? Well, it turns out that this belief, first of all, I don't know whether you know, but the first programmers were female. They might have been female because the males at that time was during World War II, and so many of the males were in the army and so not available. It might have been because programming was something that took a lot of patience and planning and so on and so forth, and that women turned out to be good at it. But for whatever reason, the early programmers were female. One of the reasons we don't actually have good data on this, but it's largely believed that the reason that there were quite, around 35% women originally choosing to study computer science is because it was something we had to type. And so it was sort of viewed as, well, why are women good at typing? They have perhaps better fine motor skills, but at any rate, women, it was one of the things you did as one of the female classes in high school, you learned to type. And so because typing was part of it, there were quite a few women who thought they might be good at it, and they went into it, and they were good at it. So what happened to cause this change? Well, right about 1980, there started to be video games and personal computers. Now, something some of you may not have thought about is that probably the easiest video games to produce are things that have objects moving towards targets. It's just in terms of programming, that turns out to be very easy to do. So for example, one of the first successful video games was Pong. Remember Pong? You had these paddles that you move up and down, and like you try and hit the ball. Well, that's a good example of something that's really easy to program. Another one was, remember Space Invaders? And these things are coming, we're trying to shoot guns up to hit them. Again, easy to program. Pac-Man, easy to program. All of these had the following kinds of attributes. First of all, they had very simple graphics. And back in those days, graphics we didn't have the kinds of abilities to do detailed graphics and rapidly changing graphics. So they had simple graphics. And they also had, you got quick feedback on whether you were successful or not. So you either gobbled before you got gobbled in Pac-Man, or you hit the Space Invaders, or you didn't, or et cetera, or you hit the ball in Pong. And one of the things about the rapid feedback is that that's one of the things that makes, for many people, it's what makes games enjoyable and perhaps sometimes somewhat addictive. And I happen to I confess I have been addicted to Tetris. I have been addicted to Luminance, a Tetris-like game. I'm currently addicted to Spider Solitaire. But the main thing I'm saying here is that just because of the technology, the kinds of games you could make were ones that tended to be shoot-'em-up games and tended to have boy-like themes. And boys spent a lot more time playing computer games and video games as they came out. And at the same time, 1980, that's the year when the PCs start to appear. I mean, it's hard to imagine now, but before then, you didn't have a computer in your house. Well, all of a sudden, in the period from 1980 onwards, you see PCs entering the home. Now, initially, they were mostly there for the parents who were doing word processing or might be doing a spreadsheet or something, but very quickly, they were taken over by the boys. And why were they taken over by the boys? They were taken over by the boys because they wanted to play games on them. Now, one of the things about playing games is, for boys, is one of the things that happened for many young males is they moved quickly from playing games to wanting to create their own games. And if you want to create your own games, you learn how to program. Now, this didn't certainly happen to all males, but it happened to enough males. And because the games were, there's now lots of evidence that females like to play computer games just as much as males do, but they like different kinds of computer games. And they're not particularly attracted by violence and shoot-em-ups and sports games. That doesn't tend to be what they like. So, given that the games that were available at that time were not ones that were particularly appealing to females, females were much less likely to want to learn to program. So what happens is that in virtually every family that has a PC, if there are boys in the family, they're the ones who are spending all the time on the PC, and they rapidly become the people who are seen as the experts. And of course, PCs also make their way to schools. And who knows how to install software? Who knows how to fix the problem with the printer? Who knows how to do this, that, and the other thing with computers? Not the teachers, it's the boys. Not all the boys, but a few boys in the classroom who spent time at home. And so very quickly, our culture shifts from computers being something that you use at work and that women work with as well as men, to being something that is a boy and a male endeavor. And what's really interesting is that if you watch as PCs, of course PCs became much more common in schools and homes in the United States, Canada, before it happened in Eastern Europe and Russia and China. And what you see is that before computers became common in homes and schools, the participation of women in computer science in Eastern Europe and Russia and China was like it used to be in the United States and Canada, up in the 30, 40, 50% range. And as soon as PCs became part, and computer games became part of the culture and in schools and in homes in those countries, you see the participation by women plummeting. And today, there are only a few countries where the participation by women in computer science at the university level is still reasonably high. And one of them is Turkey, where it's above 30%. Well, the reason for that is you don't choose what you get to major in Turkey. You just write a set of exams and you get assigned to a major based on your results. Okay. It's also common in Ireland. And one of the reasons there is that information technology has been the major driving force in the economy for the last about 50 years.